Defense now is an existential matter. We have a chance to prevent our citizens from dying in terrifying numbers from Russian bullets and Russian bombs. But we need to invest heavily in strengthening our military right away. That was Lithuania's Defense Minister Dovilė Sakalienė speaking in April this year, a powerful affirmation that for the Baltic states, defense isn't theoretical. It's urgent, it's physical, and it's on their doorstep. I'm Tuomas, a former officer in the Finnish Defence Forces, and having trained and worked closely with our Baltic allies for years, I can tell you, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania aren't overreacting. They are exposed, strategically and digitally, and they are responding with more urgency than most other NATO nations. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania do not benefit from geographic distance or many natural barriers. They share direct borders with Russia and Belarus, making them NATO's most exposed frontline. Unlike the Nordics, geography doesn't buy time here. Any conflict would begin and be fought on Baltic soil from day one. Since the early 1990s, after regaining independence from the Soviet Union, Baltic defense spending was almost symbolic, hovering around 1% of GDP due to economic hardship and limited resources. Many military assets had been dismantled or relocated, and the newly independent nations faced the daunting task of rebuilding their armed forces from scratch. Coming out of the Soviet Union, all three nations were stripped of resources, manpower, and equipment by Russia. These Russian-made hardships were more painful due to deep historical wounds. Between 1940 and 1953, an estimated 605,000 people from Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were deported or repressed by the Soviet regime. That includes around 124,000 Estonians, approximately 10% of the pre-war population, 136,000 Latvians, about 8% of the population, and 245,000 Lithuanians, roughly 9% of the total population at the time, during events such as Operation Priboi. These deportations, Russification policies, and the silencing of national institutions left lasting scars, and a strategic determination never to be caught defenseless again. Since 2022, all three have kicked off what are arguably Europe's most urgent defense buildups. Defense budgets have surged from just over 3% of GDP toward targets of 5 to 6% by 2026. Estonia, for example, approved a 4-year €3.2 billion plan, averaging 5.4% through 2029. Lithuania has committed to 5 to 6% annually from 2026 to 2030. Looking ahead to the end of this decade, Latvia and Estonia aim to maintain spending near 5%, with Lithuania pushing toward a sustained 6%, making them among NATO's highest spenders per GDP. Each nation is rapidly upgrading its armed forces. Lithuania has taken delivery of 50 JLTV armored vehicles and is receiving both Boxer infantry fighting vehicles and its locally designated variant, the Vilkas. This heavily modified Boxer platform is equipped with 30mm cannons, Spike anti-tank missiles, advanced optics, and mine protection systems, forming a key part of Lithuania's mechanized ground forces. In total, 118 Vilkas IFVs are slated for frontline deployment. In addition, Lithuania is acquiring 44 Leopard 2 main battle tanks, which will be assembled domestically in cooperation with KNDS, Germany, between 2028 and 2030. These will form Lithuania's first full armored battalion. Air defense capacity is also being scaled up, with a third Norwegian-made NASAMS battery due for delivery between 2026 and 2029. Furthermore, Lithuania has begun receiving its first out of 18 Caesar NG self-propelled howitzers, an upgraded iteration of the battle-proven artillery system that has demonstrated remarkable effectiveness in Ukraine. Lithuania is actively enhancing readiness through major exercises such as Perkūno Tvirtove and Iron Wolf, and it plans to increase its active personnel to 17,500 by 2030, with reserves expanding to 120,000 as early as 2025. Estonia has made similarly rapid progress, having just received 6 HIMARS systems, and half of its order of 12 Caesar artillery systems. Their 36 South Korean K9 Thunder howitzers have recently completed its delivery. It has also installed the Iris-T medium-range air defense system, added new fleets of Turkish 4x4 and 6x6 armored vehicles, and launched construction of a nation-spanning drone wall expected to be operational by 2027. In 2025, Estonia inaugurated Camp Rido and hosted Exercise Hedgehog 25, one of the region's largest drills, featuring over 16,000 personnel. Estonia aims to field a wartime force of approximately 43,700 troops and is increasing its annual conscription quota from 3,500 to 4,000. Latvia, as with its two neighbors, is undergoing a sweeping transformation of its ground forces. The country is phasing out its aging CVR fleet and replacing it with 84 Spanish Ascot II infantry fighting vehicles, currently being assembled locally in Latvia through a new joint venture. This builds on an earlier order of 42 Ascots, the first of which are expected to be operational by autumn 2026. In a move that warms my Finnish heart, Latvia is dramatically expanding its wheeled armored capabilities under the Patria Common Armored Vehicle System. Over 200 6x6 armored personnel carriers are being delivered between 2021 and 2029, with the first locally produced vehicle already handed over in August 2024 from the Valmiera production facility. A follow-on order of 56 command and control variants recently secured adds vital battlefield network management capabilities. Latvia seems to like to keep many of their acquisitions fairly local, and in that vein they've also gone for 18 pieces of Swedish Archer artillery, with the acquisition being signed only earlier this month, and they are also waiting for the delivery of 6 HIMARS systems. These new vehicles will form the backbone of a more mobile and versatile force structure, tactics which we'll discuss later in this episode. The Latvian government has allocated 42% of its defense budget to procurement, aiming to raise overall military spending to 5% of GDP by 2026. Latvian conscription was reinstated in 2023, and with plans to call up 7,500 conscripts annually from 2028, the country is aiming for a 50,000-strong force, bolstered both by cutting-edge technology and increased manpower. And as with its two neighbors, there's a vibrant militia and shooting practice community forming, which by some estimates add on another 50,000 reserves. But equipment and troop numbers are just one part of the equation. Underpinning these investments is a clear strategic concept, a doctrine shaped by geography, history, and hard lessons from modern warfare. The Baltic states have adopted a defense doctrine that focuses on delay, denial, degradation, and disruption, mirroring successful Ukrainian tactics against a numerically superior force. This multi-layered strategy is designed to make any invasion costly from the outset. Instead of relying on immediate large-scale counterattacks, the focus is on slowing advances with mines, drones, dispersed units, and precision-guided weapons. The aim is not to hold the line indefinitely, but to entrap invading forces long enough for its closest allies in the Nordics, Joint Expeditionary Force, and Poland to deploy. This entrapment model, leveraging drones, man-portable air defenses, and pre-registered artillery zones, has proven effective in Ukraine and is now shaping Baltic war planning. In fact, so much so that Ukrainian officers have been holding workshops with Baltic officers for about a year now. And it's not like the Baltic nations are alone either. To reinforce this posture, NATO has expanded its deployments. Germany is permanently stationing the 45th Panzer Brigade, nearly 5,000 troops, in Lithuania. But the broader picture reveals even more commitment. Sweden, in its first NATO operation, deployed 600 troops and CV-90s to Latvia in early 2025. France, the United Kingdom, Poland, and the other Nordic states were among the first to reinforce Baltic defenses, long before Germany and Sweden formalized its plans. These include rotating air policing units from Italy, Portugal, and Belgium, as well as naval patrols and undersea surveillance systems from France and Denmark. Another significant shift clearly showing the Baltic states' intentions came in 2024, when Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania collectively withdrew from the Ottawa Treaty banning anti-personnel mines. Though controversial, their rationale was grounded in practicality. Mines, especially smart and remotely deployed types, have proven extremely effective in delaying Russian armor and infantry in Ukraine. The Baltic states now view them as necessary tools of deterrence, to be deployed responsibly but decisively. Now, let's look at the different potential flashpoints and how the Baltic states and NATO aims to counter them. Strategic choke points like the Suwałki Gap, a narrow corridor between Poland and Lithuania, remain deeply vulnerable. Likewise, Narva in eastern Estonia is home to a large Russian-speaking minority and lies just across the river from Russia proper. While these communities are largely integrated today, Kremlin narratives continue to frame them as potential victims, mirroring the propaganda that preceded invasions in Georgia and Ukraine. Cyber attacks and electronic warfare are equally intense. All neighbor area nations of Russia, in particular Finland, Sweden, Poland, and the Baltics, report regular GPS jamming over the Baltic Sea, often blamed on Russia in Kaliningrad. Estonia and Latvia have suffered cyber incursions against government and energy systems. These are deliberate power plays, not random accidents. Russia appears to be testing out how to shut down NATO's communication systems. Undersea cables and energy infrastructure have also emerged as targets. In 2024, the Baltic Connector pipeline between Finland and Estonia was damaged in what authorities suspect was sabotage. Sweden, Lithuania, Norway, Poland, and Denmark have likewise reported mysterious disruptions to internet cables and offshore networks. This has prompted joint Nordic-Baltic and NATO exercises focused on maritime surveillance and seabed security, with countries like Sweden and France supplying high-end surveillance aircraft to patrol the area. Despite these risks, the Baltics are not alone. The newly strengthened NB8 group, which ties the Baltics with their Nordic neighbors, has created a framework for seamless regional defense planning and rapid reaction. Close ties with Poland only reinforce this, as do pre-positioned logistics and integrated exercises. In the event of aggression, it is widely expected that Nordic and Polish fighter jets would be engaging enemy targets within hours. Within days, joint assault elements from Poland, Finland, and Sweden could be deployed across the region, transforming any attempted invasion into a multi-front engagement. This fusion of planning, presence, and political will makes clear that any attack on Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania would not remain isolated for long. Finland and Sweden's accession to NATO brought with it one of Europe's most resilient defense postures and a massive reserve force. Norway and Denmark have committed logistics and naval assets to Baltic security. Poland, sharing the Suwałki corridor, trains alongside Lithuanian units regularly and has made it clear that any threat to the Baltics is a threat to Poland. Even if American support were to waver, something that seems increasingly likely under this Trump administration, there's even another layer of alliances which sets the Baltics up for almost unilateral European support. All three nations are members of the Northern European-led Joint Expeditionary Force, which we explored in detail in a previous video on this channel, which I'll leave a link in the description and comments for. That alliance ensures rapid access to British, Dutch, and Nordic military assets, offering a credible and ready backup even in the absence of US leadership. While investment and alliances are well and good, it doesn't really stop there for the Baltics. Since 2023, they have begun constructing extensive defensive lines across their eastern borders, often referred to as the Baltic Defense Line. These systems include fortified bunkers, modular concrete firing positions, and hundreds of kilometers of interconnected trenches and obstacles. Estonia, for example, has already begun building over 600 defensive positions along a 300-kilometer stretch of its border with Russia, and Latvia has committed to a similar network spanning more than 300 kilometers. Lithuania is reinforcing its eastern and southern sectors with fortified lines near Belarus and Kaliningrad. These lines are being built with NATO and Ukrainian engineering input and designed for layered defense, to slow mechanized formations, support ambushes, and act as a first delay before NATO units arrive. In effect, the Baltics are turning their exposed geography into a hardened battle space, ready not just to resist, but to hold. The Baltics may be on the front line, but they are no longer outmatched or isolated. With a combination of hardened national forces, forward-deployed NATO units, asymmetric defense strategies, and regional solidarity, they now stand as a cornerstone of Europe's eastern shield. Crucially, they have responded to Russia not out of fear, but from resolve. Former Estonian Prime Minister, now Europe's lead foreign diplomat Kaja Kallas, has repeatedly warned that appeasement and hesitation only emboldens Russian aggression. In a March 2025 interview, she stated, "We must stop being naive about Russia. Ukraine has shown us that defending yourself is not escalatory, it's necessary." As always, we hope you enjoyed this episode. You'll find links to all the other videos we mentioned, like our deep dive into the Joint Expeditionary Force, down in the comments and description. Have a fantastic weekend, and a special shout out to my Baltic brothers. Your commitment to defending your countries is nothing but impressive.